I was in the hospital. Because the moment you start to feel paranoid, the moment you start to feel like you're losing your mind, it comes so unexpectedly. I wish I had known this before it started to happen. Maybe you are already hitting that sort of threshold. You start to perceive your reality in a new light. You start to perceive the world differently. And the mind wrestling with that because the mind cannot really understand what's going on. Once you are across the line, there's no coming back. And I would call my girlfriend and I would just be with her, and I would be with my best friend, and I would call my mom, I would go visit my sister, and I just felt like nothing would ever satisfy again. The strong disillusion started to happen, and the sensation that this was just all a dream hit me. Everything is impermanent. If I am honest, I wish I had known this before it started to happen. Because the moment you start to feel paranoid, the moment you start to feel like you're losing your mind, it comes so unexpectedly that even if you try to make sense about what's going on, it's so damn fucking difficult. It's a real struggle. I believe I hadn't had I hadn't gone through awakening yet, but I was approaching it. I was approaching it. It was like maybe 2 years ago, two 2.5 years ago, maybe. I was still with my ex girlfriend. We're living together. Excuse me. And by that time, I was really putting everything into waking up. I was meditating 2 to 3 hours a day. I was watching all the videos from the people that I thought would be so helpful for me. And they were, to be honest, they were. And I can mention them in another video, or maybe in this video, I get to mention them. In this moment, Frank Yang comes to my mind. I've talked to him a few times in satsangs and stuff like that, and he's always been helpful to me. And I remember watching his videos and watching him going, so crazy about specific parts of the process. But when it came to my experience, I didn't really know that it would look like it did. Because it comes a point, maybe you are already hitting that sort of threshold in which you start to perceive your reality in a new light. You start to perceive other people. You start to perceive seemingly object. You start to perceive the world differently, right? And the mind is battling that. It's wrestling with that because the mind cannot really understand what's going on. It's like suddenly, and I love this metaphor from I think the first time that I read this metaphor was in the book Awake, or no, yeah, Awake's Your Turn, by Angelo Di Lullo, one of my favorite non-dual teachers. Um, and he mentions, like, it's like if you have been all your life wearing a virtual reality glasses, then you take them off, and now what is this? What is this? So I started to become kind of crazy. I wasn't going crazy, but the feeling of it was kind of like that. I remember talking to my partner at the time about what's really going on, because I started to perceive like every single thing that I was looking at, every single person I would look at, they seem to be empty. And I cannot explain how it feels. Like, if you are already in that phase, you know how it feels like. It's like suddenly, and maybe it's different for. I mean, the flavor can be different. Can different at that. The flavor can be different. Excuse me. For you, for me, for other seeming person. But for me, it was like whatever I was looking at, it felt like it had no substance to it. It wasn't like solid. Like things in the real world started to lose their solidity. That's how I was feeling towards things. I was still there was still a sort of like an entity living life, like awakening hadn't happened yet at that time, but I had crossed a line that's, you know, once you are across the line, there's no coming back. Daniel Ingram says that in one of his books. But I remember just feeling so empty, feeling like nothing would satisfy. And I would call my girlfriend and I would just be with her, and I would be with my best friend, and I would call my mom. I would go visit my sister and who's in another town. And I just felt like nothing would ever satisfy again. It's like somehow you see how none of it is real. It's like you see, like there is apparent objects and apparent persons and apparent events, but you know from outside the mind, you know as the reality that you already are, that everything is impermanent. Like there's no solidity in any of that. Everything that seemed to be real ceases to be real because it never was. And I'm not saying things are unreal. Maybe there's a middle way. Maybe things are not real, nor they are unreal. So if you are really going through a phase in which you feel paranoid, you feel like you're going crazy, you feel like you're losing your mind throughout the awakening process, it's normal. The other day, I was in the hospital. I spent one night at the hospital because one of the things that's going on in my right kidney. And I had a moment, and this is, of course, after awakening. And I had a moment where I started to look up at the room, which was filled with people, and they were lying in their beds, and there were doctors coming and going. And for a few moments, maybe 15 minutes or 10 minutes, a really strong dissolution started to happen. And the sensation that this was just all a dream hit me like crazy. It just hit me like crazy. And the fear started to come up. And then sort of like I panicked for a bit. But the panicking was in the body. It wasn't as much mental as it used to be. Panicking was in the body. So I just remained with being the sensations till they ceased, till they stopped. But for a few moments, just that feeling of this is just a dream was so intense. It seemed like a few steps ahead of the process of my own awakening, that it felt like a threat. I felt like I didn't want to experience that, because you know what? You can absolutely wake up and everything is happening inside you. And that's the reason why you are already awake. But at the same time, that thing, that person you're taking yourself to be, is not the thing that goes to the other side, that comes across the line. If you really want to get to the other side, you gotta be 100% sure you want to go through these phases of feeling like you're losing your mind, feeling like depressed, feeling like nothing makes sense at all, feeling like you are alone in this world at the same time, feeling like you are dissolving, because all those things are part of the awakening process and post awakening process. That's why I wanted to make this little video, because I was just remembering how crazy it was for me at some point, and still is being crazy. Sometimes the craziness comes with great emotions. It's not fear. And other times, this craziness during the awakening process comes with very unsettling emotions, very uncomfortable emotions. The good news is the more you learn to be with them, the more at rest you can be, feeling whatever the body wants to feel, the easier it gets. And it's necessary, for the process. And it's never going to be you who is comfortable with those emotions. And you're going to see that. You're going to see that. Yeah, for sure. It's amazing. The other day I was just walking after 3 very intense days, inquiring into a specific part of the process. And then I was just walking in the street, and then it hit so hard. This clarity with everything, this absence of a manager. It was almost like an insight into non-doership. It was so cool. I'll talk about it in another video. But if you want to take just one thing from this one, it is the fact that whatever happens in this process, it's exactly what needs to be happening. And this is why waking up is so hard. And it's amazing. It is the most beautiful thing, because you get to see things for what they are, which are not things, which are which are what they are. Yeah. I hope it was helpful. Let me know in the comments. Thank you.